dragged on, excellent length, a little bit of movement.
Thank you everybody for joining us today. Anil, I know we've had a couple of conversations before.
Yeah.
We just came in. I had to bore him at that office too. So
So you want a bowler to bowl at two batters here, is it?
yeah, well, you can take it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so this is where we're going. We have a script ready, obviously, and the script is basically between us. Through the weekend, we've thought through what are the questions we want to throw at you, and hear your candid response.
In a spirit of full disclosure, we reached out to some of your former team members and asked them if there's one question they would like to ask you. What
Yeah,
would it
not
be?
a problem. Not a problem at all. So what was that question?
Coming your way.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
All right. So, Anil, you have this unique distinction, right? Of the only person who's taken 10 wickets, Indian player who's taken 10 wickets in an innings. Not only that, you got a century to yourself. To top it up, you also made a partnership with Srishant of 73 runs, where not known for batting for sure, right? What were the conversations that you had with him, middle of the pitch? You know, quite curious to know that.
With Srishant?
Srishant, or yeah, let's start with Srishant.
Okay. No, during that partnership.
The partnership, yeah.
No, what? I certainly remember one conversation that I had with him. I think when he walked into bat, I was around 70, I think, batting. And he was the last man in. And we sort of started to have a partnership, build a partnership. I was taking most of the strike. I was farming the strike. And I remember England taking the third new ball. And Jimmy Anderson was at the top of his mark, taking the new ball. And he's still holding a new ball today, which is amazing. You know, hats off to him. He's 40. And as a fast bowler, to have, picked up so many wickets is outstanding. Coming back to Srishant, so I said, Sri, they've taken a new ball, which means that, you just get off strike. Try and block, and then make sure that you're not getting out. So just block, and if try and give me the strike, and if I get the strike, I'll ensure you won't get any strike. Last ball, be ready to take a single. He said yes, and he was facing, and they took I think the third new ball in the fourth ball or the fifth ball of the over. So all I had to say was just block. So end of the over, I take strike. He says yes. And as Jimmy Anderson bowled the ball, Srishant stepped out and smashed him for 4 over point. I said, what the hell is happening? He says, Anil bhai, I don't know. As soon as I see the bowler coming in, I keep running at him. So I said, okay. Then I realized that, look, this was the last ball that he's going to be on strike. Either I get out and face all the deliveries, the next deliveries till I get my 100, or if I get my 100, so be it. Otherwise, I get out. I'm not going to give him strike, especially with the new ball.
I have to ask you this question, right? Who was the toughest bowler that you ever faced?
Bowler?
Yeah.
I thought everyone. Yeah, if it was easy, I would have been sitting here on 10,000 runs. So, yeah, I mean, most of them. Yeah, I mean, Suckline was probably the toughest spinner. Fast bowlers, I mean, everybody was. Whoever bowled more than 130 was always tough for me. But spinners, I think Suckline couldn't pick his dusra. And invariably, I played him in the 48th over. I mean, he was a spinner. Even I've bowled death overs for India in the 48th, 47th, but he was consistently bowling those overs. And you had to swing. You had to hit. I mean, he was coming in the 48th or 49th over, and then it was not easy to pick him.
Any specific memory from this journey, that specific series? Of getting the 10 wickets, century to yourself, and that century came after 118 matches for yourself, right?
Yeah,
you won.
Yeah, finally I got into the bowler's head, what exactly he was bowling, and that's one of the reasons why I got my 100. I knew exactly what the next ball was being bowled. No, I think from the Pakistan series, it was one of those series where we were playing Pakistan at home after, 12 years. 87 was the last test series that we played against Pakistan. That was Sunil Gavaskar's last test match here in Bangalore. Uh, and after that, we had never played Pakistan in a test series. So it was one of those special series we knew that we had to win. There was no two ways about it. The first test match was very close. We lost by 12 runs. And the second test match, once they scored 400 runs, once we scored 400 runs on the board, I knew that it had to be me. I was the senior spinner. Fourth day of the match, I had to take the onus, put my hand up, and obviously once we got a breakthrough after lunch, things just started to happen. One after the other, I bowled right from lunch to tea, and 6 out of 6, and then got the break at the right time. And I knew that if this probably was an opportunity for me to get better than what I had done previously against Sri Lanka. I had a 6 for against Sri Lanka. I think it was 7. So this could have been better. So yeah, 7 happened, 8 and 9 happened in 2 balls. I was on a hat trick, and Wasim was on strike. And I thought, first ball, let me give him a single, and then get Waqar on strike. And I realized that Wasim is not going to take a single. It had to be Wasim Akram. And the previous over, Javagal Srinath must have bowled the toughest over of his life. Because as a bowler, you are constantly trained, or you're learning your skills to bowl at the stumps. You are looking to get batsmen out. And here, he had to bowl wide and not wide. So you know what I mean. So it cannot be a wide. I think he was called wide twice. He was wide twice, so he had to bowl 8 balls and not get a wicket. That's tough. So he did that 1 over, and then I bowled. I knew that I had to get a wicket in that over. Otherwise, it would have been really embarrassing to ask Sri to do it again. And in fact, I remember in '94 when we played Sri Lanka here in Bangalore, Kapil Dev was very close to breaking Sir Richard Hadley's record of 431. He was on 430, and Sri Lanka had lost 8 wickets on day 4, and we had plenty of time, plenty of runs. So there was no way that Sri Lanka would win the test match. It was only one winner, and I was bowling from the other end. And he needed 2 wickets to cross Sir Richard Hadley. And it was my job to bowl wide. I did bowl wide. The batsman had a swing, inside edge bowled. So I had to apologize to Kapil Paji. I said, sorry Paji, I didn't do it. It was the batsman's fault. I really bowled wide, and eventually he got out, and Kapil Dev equaled 431 here, and then eventually he crossed it in Ahmedabad in that next test match.
I think while we're on the topic of bowling, right, like successful bowling has almost always worked in tandem. You have had series of partners, and whether it's a spinner, whether it's even with fast bowler, like the example that you gave with Sri and you. How do you make it work? In the sense, when do you decide who takes a defensive role? When do you decide who takes an aggressive role? Because I think your role a lot of times when the fast bowlers had clicked was to stop the bleeding of the runs. So how do you...
Whoever bowled with me took the defensive role. There was no way that I was taking a defensive role. even if it was a green top, I was taking the aggressive role. There was no way that I was taking a defensive role. Even if it's all about, defensive role. When you say, my thought process was every ball I'm getting a wicket. If I don't have a wicket at the back of my mind, then I'm not bowling. Even if I'm, I've given 100 runs, none for 100 of 25 overs. Every ball I'm still looking for a wicket. And that's been my approach, and I've never stepped back. Even when we had to sort of look to restrict the opposition, at least in a session, I've always, even if I'm bowling around the stumps, bowling in the rough where, the batsman's just kicking at it, I'm still thinking of a wicket. How do I try and set him up? But I've never taken a defensive role. The only role that I took of not a defensive role, but choosing an end was in Wellington. In Wellington, I don't know how many of you are aware. It's probably the windiest city in the world, one of the windiest cities. So it you can't really. It's very tough to bowl, and Srinath obviously had the wind behind him when he's bowling as a fast bowler. So I had the wind against me. That was the only option. I didn't have an option to bowl with the wind behind me. So I was the only spinner, 3 fast bowlers, 1 spinner. So I had to bowl against the breeze. That was quite challenging because you literally are pushing into the wind, and it's not easy. But those are some things that you learn and you understand. But that was the only time that I didn't have a choice of end.
Yeah, but this is also very relevant to the current context, right? Like if you look at founders and the teams that they're surrounded by, often have to work in partnerships, and I think a lot of times, while it's hard to communicate, you don't have enough time to communicate. You don't have enough time to make those decisions on who plugs in where and when do you want to who takes in what role. So if you would have to communicate this, like there's a high degree of agility around this, right? Like how would you advise a founder in terms of how they could approach it?
No, what I meant when I said aggressive approach wasn't necessarily saying that I didn't bowl to a situation.
Yeah.
I was only looking at doing what I'm supposed to do. I think you read the situation, and then you understood that on that surface, the fast bowler had a better chance of getting a wicket. So you need to understand that. I mean, like how batting is all about partnerships, bowling is also about partnerships. You don't want to leak runs. If someone's really bowling well, the other end, you need to be really at it. More often than not, the batters get out because of the pressure that you build from both ends. And that's exactly how one needs to do it. And I think it's all about understanding each other's positives, and also, not more than anything else, understanding each other's limitations, I think is really critical in a partnership. And once you understand that, and in a conversation or in a duel where you are in the middle of the game, you need to appreciate that and then let your ego aside. Because whenever I traveled outside of India, especially on day one, in India, even if it was day one, I would have a silly point short leg and a slip. But soon, when I played county cricket, I learned that that is not the only way to get wickets. You also have to spread the field. You have to have start with slightly, a defensive field, not necessarily in your mind, but the field may look defensive. And this was one of the tips or suggestions that the great Shane Warne gave. We had a conversation. I said, Warnie, how do you sort of start an innings in England, for that matter? I know he started with the greatest ball of the century. That's a different story, but generally. And after that, I don't think it didn't really matter what field he set for English batters, because they were all looking for the something that was not there. So he said, look, I start off with a defensive field and slowly start bringing in one after the other, wherever I wanted them. And that to me was a great learning as well, because you're not just learning, and that's the ecosystem, right? I mean, that we all live in. I mean, it's great to see people from across different areas of business here, and we learn from each other. And it's, yes, you may be competition, but you're also learning from one another. And that's exactly how the cricketing world is as well. I mean, the conversations that we used to have with either Wani or Murali, my fellow spinners, and it was wonderful to have that. And for me, understanding your partner, what he is capable of in the middle in that situation, and then playing accordingly. And of course, you have to go with the batters as well. In some situations, that even if it's a green top, this particular batter is uncomfortable against spin. So you then take charge. And in another case, even again in a turning track, that your other bowler, it could be a fast bowler, it could be anyone else, that he has the edge. So you sort of give him the lead, and then you be restrictive and not give away runs. So it works that way. So understanding each other more than the strengths, I think understanding your limitations is more important.
While we're on the same topic, like one of my fondest memories of watching you play was the '96 Titan Cup qualifiers, right? Like, I mean, your mother and your grandma were watching in the screens, and I prayed to every god whose name I could recite on that particular day. And both of you are not traditional batters, and you had like 52 runs. If I remember, you had to stitch together for India to qualify. What were the conversations like between you and Sri? Because essentially you were playing with a series of limitations and which was not naturally your skill set, naturally your strength. Like, how did you stitch that together?
Yeah, I think it was great to see my mother and my aunt. So it was her sister-in-law who was sitting next to her. Both of them happened to be at the Bemel end. If people who have been to Chinnaswamy Stadium, it was the opposite end. And if people thought that the players' family got really good passes, please, okay, it was the other end, not the pavilion end, okay? And they were sitting there. The only reason that the cameraman could figure out that my mom was actually sitting there was because a classmate of mine, Rashid Mohsin, he also played first-class cricket with me. He played quite a bit of cricket. He was sitting there, and he sort of told the camera guy, saying, Anil's mom is sitting here. So when I walked into bat, Sri was the aggressor. I mean, Sri had a better sort of power-hitting skill, and I was more, going by the traditional route of just playing in and then, getting off strike. That was my role. So we understood that each other. I mean, we understood each other really well, not just as bowling partners, but also as batting partners. And we were just having a conversation in the office. So someone asked, what was the conversation? What was the joke between you and Sri? I said, look, he was the other understanding of both of us was he was certainly quicker off the blocks. I mean, he could run 100 meters if he wanted to in probably 10 and a half seconds. I mean, that's how quick he was. And I was probably the other end of the spectrum. So both of us, with pads on, running between wickets, he had to keep pace with me rather than the other way around, which was impossible. So that was the conversation, saying, okay, knowing each other's limitations, and then understanding, saying, listen, let's not get run out. And I was hoping and praying that Australia will not bring on a spinner. Because as soon as Sri sees a spinner, he only sees sixes. And if you risk every ball, then the chances of you getting out are more. So I was hoping that Steve Waugh, I think Mark Waugh, whoever the captain was, he's not going to bring on a spinner. Fortunately, they kept bowling McGrath, Rifle, and I think Gillespie. Yeah, so these three guys, and then Steve Waugh bowled, I think, 1 over. So Sri took him on, and my job was to only give him a single, and then be there till the end. I know, the one thing that really hurt me that day was as I was walking in, I know Sachin got out, and Sri was there, and as I was walking in, the crowd started leaving. They wanted to probably get ahead of the traffic from the crowd. So I said, listen, I mean, two Karnataka boys are out there, and then it's disappointing to see the home crowd leave. I said, okay, by the time you guys go home, you'll realize you missed something. And that was one of the things that happened. I mean, we were just positive. You keep that partnership going, and you never know. Wait till the end. You never know. We've seen that too many times when MS Dhoni at the crease. He waits till the end, and invariably, probably 7 out of 10 times he wins it, which is a great thing to know. And so that was one of the reasons. I mean, we waited till the end. You never know. So till the last ball is bowled. In fact, we won with an over to spare, which was very strange. We didn't even expect that.
At what point of time did you think the game?
No, I think we just wanted to bat. We knew that if we batted 7 overs, we would get there eventually, very close to it. And as you got closer to it, it was more important to just take less risk, at least from my point of view. Sri was, he was just looking to hit it. So if it was in his area, he would go for it. And it was one of those things where it just happened. It worked.
I mean, you've had a phenomenal career, like 18 years in international cricket. And the evolution has been fantastic because when you started, T20 and IPL as a concept didn't exist. From there to becoming the captain of the Indian team to eventually even becoming a captain of RCB and taking them to the second place, like what helped you make those evolution?
No, I think it's all in the mind, more than anything else. Accepting change and trying to measure up to the competition, whether it is the current or it could be, how do you sort of improve from where you are today to what you can be the following day, I think is very important. If you have the thought process day in, day out, while you're practicing, while you're going and working on your skills, it's extremely important that, that evolution automatically happens. And for me, yeah, from one day cricket, I literally bowled in the power play more often than not. I bowled in the death. So my 10 overs was generally bowled with a new ball. In the first 6 or 7 overs, I would be bowling. I would definitely bowl in the middle phase, and I also would bowl after the 40 overs. I'm sure 2 overs or 3 overs. So I had done all the hard yards of being there and soaking in that pressure and then trying to outperform the batter. And from a test perspective, if you have bowled 30 overs on an average and bowled 55 overs, I think in my career as an average, then the toughest part for me from an IPL perspective was bowling 4 overs, because by the time I got to IPL, I needed 4 overs to warm up. And I was towards the latter half of my, towards the end of my career. So I had literally finished playing international cricket when I played the second and the third season for RCB. And like I said, it was just a mental shift in the mindset. Because I don't know how many of you remember the first RCB team. We probably could beat any test team in the world. We were the greatest test team in the world, and we finished 7th. Like I said, it was not that cricket is different. I mean, it's 22 yards, it's 5.5 ounce ball coming at you. It's the same, nothing's different. It's just a shift in mindset, and all of us could do that tweak the following season. And at the same team, yes, there were 1 or 2 changes, but then the same team, we could, reach the finals. So it was just a shift in mindset. That's all is required. When change happens, you resist, not because you don't have the skills, because you don't want that. You have the skills. I mean, cricket, you play a 5-day game. If you're a test player, it's easy to adjust. The other way around is always not easy. I know, there are a lot of people, or at least on social media, you keep seeing recommendations of who should be playing for India in a test match. Yeah, it's not that easy. Coming in from a T20 IPL kind of a setup to play for India and perform. Yes, you may perform once, but then consistently you need to perform, because you easily, opposition players find you out. So it's important that you make that shift. And for me, it was only that shift. So, to get into an IPL thinking that if you bowl 64 overs, you finish the tournament rather than 1 test match is a great feeling.
So what is your process though for in terms of making that mindset shift happen continuously? I mean, like your entire journey has been that, from medium pacer to spinner to player to coach.
I think it's all about what the situation demands, and then you sort of adapt. You try and find a solution to that. I was never a classical spinner. So people looked at me in different ways. They categorized me as fast bowler, in-swing bowler, off spinner, whatever. I didn't care. It didn't really matter. I mean, for me, the last column was important. How do you get people out? Nobody bothers about how those scores have, how the batters have scored runs. At the end of the day, the scorecard doesn't tell you that, right? It says 100. It doesn't tell you the wagon wheel. I mean, even if the wagon wheel, nobody remembers it. If you have finished second, nobody remembers that. I mean, everybody knows who won the first IPL, who won the second IPL, who won the first World Cup, who won the second, who was the runner-up. You'll take time. Other than if you're an RCB fan, Yeah, we know, right? As RCB fans, we know that we came second, yeah, twice. So you remember those, and then you sort of celebrate that. But yeah, so you need to understand that uh, you have to start getting better every day, and then once you are in that process, then you don't need to really think too much. And for me, it was a challenge every time, where the last column, how do you adapt, how do you understand the conditions, and how do you make those subtle changes. At the end of it, the changes that you make as a bowler, you don't want the world to see it. You want the batter to see it. That's all you're interested in. If the batter is seeing something different coming every time, then you know that he's in trouble. If the world doesn't see it, if the commentators don't see it, it doesn't really matter. I'm not here to create a story, there are a lot of entertainers. Yes, I'm an entertainer, but I have my own way of looking at getting the result. And I think that's important. You need to worry about that, and how do you get better? How do you compete? Like I mentioned, if you're moving from one game to the other, how do you keep relevant? How do you get fitter? How do you then compete with the younger lot? And what changes can you make to be still relevant? And that's the only thing.
The Monkey Gate. It was one of the most infamous scandals for the era, right? The team went through a lot at that point of time. There was too much of noise, be it the press, poor umpiring. We can say it was even, just unfair circumstances that the team went through, right? You made some decisions with very little time, and they were appreciated too. Uh, it was also a state where the team wanted to come back home and not play further. How did you take time? How do you make the decisions in such little time with little data? Two, the most important thing was to get the whole team aligned, and they all stood along with you. How was it at that point of time?
No, I think what is critical when you're a leader is to earn the respect of your colleagues, and it doesn't come overnight. It's mutual. It's not just the captain who's there, but even the players. You need to have that mutual respect, and it's an extension. I mean, just because you're a captain doesn't necessarily mean that you're a different person now, or you have additional responsibilities, but you can't be a different person, nor can you be a different personality to your own colleagues, right? Suddenly they can't see that change in you. So as long as you have kept that going, and then you've kept the communication with the players, and you've been honest with the interactions that you have had with players, so it's easier to handle any conflict or any situation that you end up in, which you don't sign up for. I mean, as a cricketer, you never sign up for something that you don't even expect. So in that kind of a situation where you have to get the trust and the backing of your players, it just can't be one voice all the time. It has to be some influencers within the group, and those influencers within the group need to trust your judgment too, and you need to be able to convince them. And it's not just that particular point that you can convince. You should have probably worked on many other situations, or not necessarily conflicts, but any other team causes that one had to be a part of, that you would have used to convince or get them on board. So if you have done that in the past, then it becomes a lot easier to get them on board. And when you have the larger picture in mind, which for us it was cricket, cricket is larger than any individual. The organization or the institution that you are working for, in this case, is bigger than an individual. So you have to put that on top. And I think more importantly, you get a lot of suggestion around that time. You get a lot of opinions. As a leader or as a person in charge, you need to be able to reject. You need to have the skill to reject what you don't want to take, because that's the biggest learning. That's the toughest job. Yes, everyone wants their view and saying, hey, you know what, you guys should do this, you should do that, you should do that. and you read the media, it's a different story. You ask somebody, a young player within the team, he tells you a different view. You ask the senior player, he will give you a different view. And then you ask somebody outside of this, they'll give you a different view. So what do you then rely on, and then what do you take in, and then you need to make your own judgment, and you need to make your own decision as well, because you're there to make that decision. And in those cases, I think, the best advice that I got was from a former India captain. He sent me a message saying, son, go by how history will look at this. I'm sure you'll make the right decision. And I think that was the biggest sort of suggestion that came across. And like I mentioned, if you take the larger picture of cricket above anything else, then it becomes a lot easier for you to make a decision. And I had some great people who are all former captains who I have played with, whether it was Sachin, Rahul or Saurav or Lakshman, who played for a long, long time. And it's a lot easier because they exactly knew. Even, it's not necessary that communication means only talking to somebody or listening to somebody. It's also just being there. They know that, within the body language says a lot. Even in a room, body language says a lot. And in that, that, look, everybody is with me. Yes, there may be a few, they may all nod their head. When they go out, they may not actually be convinced in what you're saying. But that's where the influencers and all these special guys who are a part of the squad certainly matter. And once you have taken that decision, you can't back out. I mean, you can't really worry about what the consequences are going to be, because the last thing that you should be thinking at that point in time is to say, look, I'm not worried about the result. I just need to, yes, this is the right thing to do now. Yes, in hindsight, everybody can say anything can be said. But as a team, we need to be really together. And you need to show that solidarity as well. And that's one of the things that we did as well. If you notice, in those 3 or 4 days after that episode, we were all in a room in Sydney. We were not going out of the hotel. I thought after a couple of days, I said, look, we can't be sitting in a room cooped up, because the moment you stepped out, the entire media was all over the place. So we decided that what was really good with the Indian team was a round of volleyball, sort of brought in laughter, brought in competition, brought in camaraderie, brought in a whole lot of other elements that you would want in a team environment. So I said, let's go to Bondi Beach. Let's all get out of this place. And we went in a bus. And we went to the beach. We played beach volleyball. We split into 2 teams and played beach volleyball. And that probably was the most followed volleyball match played by cricketers. And we wanted to show that, look, we're not affected by all of this. We're all together here. And we are here to win a cricket match. And let's go and enjoy ourselves. At the end of it, you shouldn't forget the fun element of being a part of a team or being in any crisis. At the end of it, you need to show that, look, we're all together in this. And that to me was the biggest learning, that in crisis you need to also see how you can get the team together and what actually triggers that bonding in a group. And if you've been with that team for a long time, then you know exactly what is that one event that can certainly trigger and say, oh, everything is normal here. Nothing's changed. So this volleyball was a trigger, and that sort of once you came back from there, everything's normal. Nothing's changed.
It's so pertinent to today's scenario, especially if I look at the macroeconomics, and a lot of founders and CHROs are going through this of either mass firing, layoffs are happening, no appraisals. It's not an easy thing, to take decisions, and because especially if you have a lot of top talent in your organization, but you need to shed weight or you need to kind of right size the team for whatever reason, it's very tough to take such decisions. What in your experience has been the toughest decision that you have taken, and how did you go about taking the decision, especially given the fact that a cricket team, it comes from it's the cream top 15 which comes there, right? And then you have to take decisions on who's going to get dropped and not.
No, I think one of the things that we just spoke about, that was certainly not the easiest phase of being a captain. And I also realized that post that event, I mean, I just want to extend that a little bit as well because of the question that you've asked. Post that event, we went to Canberra, for a 4-day game, a practice match, which I took a break. I didn't play that game. And it was the first time that we were addressing the media, because there's a sort of prerequisite that before every match, somebody from the team addresses the media. Post every match, somebody from the team addresses the media. So who's going to address the media? Because this was the first time that somebody was addressing the media. So I thought to myself that maybe I should wait. Maybe I should look at some of my colleagues to address. Then maybe, it may deflect a little bit from the actual whatever. I mean, whatever the media wanted to ask, whatever controversy they wanted to create out of this whole episode. I thought to myself, I said, no, I can't let this linger on because we have a test match coming up in 3 days or 4 days or whatever it was. I said, no, I'm going, closing this and saying that's it. We've moved on. Now our focus is the next match and our preparation for the next match. And so that was one of the tough calls that I had to take, which, again, because it was my prerogative to take a decision. And in fact, I don't know how many of you remember that there was no official coach on that tour. Gary Kirsten was the coach, but he had just been appointed the coach for the Indian cricket team, and he only joined later because it was Christmas time. So he said, I have other commitments and family commitments. He was coming on board. In fact, he came on board, I think, sometime third day of the Perth Test match, or fourth day, something like that. I don't remember. And then he continued with the one-day series after that. So there was, so that's what I said. That was tough. And the toughest thing for any coach or captain is to announce the playing 11. Announce the playing 11 is easier, but then how do you manage the 12, 13, 14, 15? What message are you going to give? It's not easy. It's never easy because all of them are superstars. All of them have contributed to the team's success. They have done things really well in different matches. And that's a tough job. And I think that's where, if your communication is good, you're honest, and you say, look, these are the reasons that you miss out. And it could be the situation, it could be the opposition, it could be the pitch, it could also be what we as a team are going through at that period, where it could be potentially some batting, a bit of a vulnerability in the batting, so you may have to bolster the batting a little bit or get an all-rounder there. Or if you think that, no, this is going to seam around, we need a batsman who can give us a bit of bowling. So all of that. And if you explain there, I know, not many, especially the other person, he won't agree with you. But it doesn't matter. I mean, you have to take a decision. You are responsible for it. you do that, and then keep that communication going. I think throughout the match, get that person on your side, and then explain to them, saying, okay, these are one of the reasons. Because, yes, at the end of the game, you may see something different. But it doesn't matter. I think before the start of the game is how you've seen it and you communicate.
In terms of the communication piece, I know you've talked about it in some of your other interviews when you were building the team, about everybody knows their roles. Like, the accountability is very high. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. Like, the buck stops with whoever the captain is, saying you could have all your stars who may not perform on that day, and it's still the captain who's got the gun to the head, for the lack of a better word. So in a situation like that, like, how do you create that culture of transparency around the communication piece? It's tricky.
Yeah, it is. But I've always had a very clear understanding of what the role of a captain or a coach or both are. When you win, the team wins. When you lose, the captain loses. So that's how I look at it. And that's how, as a coach, you look at it. So it's about putting the team ahead of personal glory. And if you can create that kind of a culture coming in, and giving the accolades when even the smaller contributions that you have, it's not noticed. Yes, you have the man of the match. Generally, the man of the match is someone who scored 100 or someone who's picked up 5 wickets. Yes, you get rewarded the man of the match. What we started, when I was the coach, was even, with the IPL teams that I worked with, was to have an internal man of the match, irrespective of the result. The result didn't matter. It came from within the players and the support team, and not necessary that it had to be a playing member. It could be the physio who's put a player on the park, because he would have probably gone and picked up wickets. He would have won the game for us, or he would have contributed to the team. But a physio who was silently working behind closed doors would have put him on the park. And so you reward that particular physio. So it's just a way of encouraging performance within the team and not necessarily looking at the result. And when we won, or generally you win the man of the match when you win, and not many times you have a man of the match on a losing side. Yeah, so when that happens, then the actual man of the match cannot get the award. So it had to be somebody else within the team, and that, I think, encourages quite a bit of good camaraderie and bonding, and also competitiveness, and to say, okay, here's someone who's being recognized. And the recognition that you get from your group is more important than the recognition that you get outside. And that, to me, is the biggest strength that you build in a team environment.
That's a powerful practice. I'm going to just ask one last question out of curiosity. You played with a broken jaw. How did you communicate with the rest of the team on what your plans were?
The only communication that I had to do was call Awzat, to the umpire. And that was the toughest part, because I did tell you, right, when you asked me in a bowling partnership who's the aggressor and who's the defensive, nobody had a choice. It was my decision to go onto the field. Neither Andrew Leapers, the physio, had a say in it, nor the doctor had a say in it. I just told the doctor that I am going onto the field. I just told Andrew Leapers that I have to go onto the field, do whatever it takes to get me out there. So that's when the doctor sort of suggested to Andrew that he has to hold my jaw in one place like that and try and tie me up. I said, I'm going in, because I knew that the next day I had to come back for a surgery because it was broken. It was split in two here. I mean, it was literally like a gap like this. And when the ball hit me, I put my tongue in, and I asked Andrew Leapers, who came running in, I said, have I lost a tooth? Because I can feel a gap. He said, no, everything is intact. So I took a pill and then continued batting, and got out after a couple of overs again to a bouncer. And so there was nobody that could stop me from going on to the field. In fact, I called my wife, who was here in Bangalore. I was in West Indies, and I called her, I think it was middle of the night. I said, look, I'm coming back because I need a surgery. So she organized everything here, organized the hospital, the doctors, spoke saying, okay, flight's done. I'm landing at such and such a time. By the way, I'm going to bowl. So she was the first one who got to hear what I'm going to do. I mean, she probably thought I was joking. And so, yeah, it was my decision. I don't think anybody had any say in, I don't think anybody tried even to stop me from going onto the field, because I felt if I could pick up a few wickets, then it would put us in a good position. We had scored 600 plus runs, and we were 1-all in that series. And I knew that this was the last opportunity for me in West Indies. I was coming back. If I could pick up a few wickets, put the team in a good position, then who knows? You never know. We could have won the test match. So that was the only thought process. And the only communication that I had was to Dave Shepherd, who was the standing umpire there. And he, in fact, was more worried than me, because every ball I bowled, he was asking me, are you okay? And if I wanted to speak, he would say, no, don't say anything, just gesture. Are you okay? I said, yeah, chef, I'm fine. So yeah, it was just me. I don't think anybody had any say.
Non-verbal communication, I guess.
No. No, when you're bowling, you don't need to be verbal. Yeah, I mean, I know I was quite a bit handful to the batter and to some of our fielders as well. But yeah, it was communication more to the umpire. Telling him that every ball hit the pad, it was out.
Reminding him of that, right?
Yeah, reminding him that, every time I hit the ball, pad, arms, I bowl straight, I don't turn the ball. So when it hits the pad, invariably it's hitting the wicket. Yeah, I kept reminding him.
So we come to the last part of this session with quick 4-5 questions and a rapid fire. Your favorite cricket ground?
For me, I've played across the world. There have been some fantastic memories across. Chinnaswamy Stadium is always close to my heart, but Kotla has to be something special because coincidentally, most things happened at the Kotla.
Right.
I was under 19. I played Pakistan in a test series, got 100 there. We won the test match.
Right.
And I made my comeback into the team playing an Irani Trophy game at the Kotla. And then the 10 wickets happened at the Kotla. I probably have, I think on an average, 8 wickets at the Kotla in a test match.
Wow.
And my test captaincy, the first test match against Pakistan was at the Kotla. And my last test match was at the Kotla. So I guess it has to be.
Sure. What's your biggest fear?
No, nothing. I mean, I don't think I fear anything. I mean, I don't think on those lines. The only time that possibly a thought crossed my mind that I would never be able to bowl was when I got injured in my shoulder. And it took me almost 2 months to lift my hand. I was in a sling for about 6 weeks. So, yeah, I mean, at that time, I thought maybe that's the end. That was the only time.
Favorite movie of all time?
I'm not a great movie
Okay.
buff, but I think in recent times I loved watching Kantara. I think it was very special, something outstanding, and I mean it touches everyone. So it was wonderful performance by Rishabh, and it's a wonderful movie.
In one word, cricketers being entertainers. What's your response?
Yeah, I think it's a thumbs up because I think it's wonderful to see cricket as an entertainment. IPL is probably a true reflection of that line that you just said.
Yeah.
IPL is a true entertainment.
Last one. Why Onsurity? One word.
Trust. I think I probably when people look at me, they probably think that, okay, this is what he brought to the table. And
Right.
I think I look at Onsurity and I look at the same.
Great. Thank you so much, Anil. It was a pleasure.
Gone, dragged on, excellent length, a little bit of movement.